Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about getting a CDL license, becoming a truck or bus driver, how to get into the industry with the new minimum entry level training, and what to expect as a truck driver in the industry. You know, is it better than it was a few years ago, a few decades ago, as some of the old timers tell you? Yes, it is definitely better, and it is definitely a career that you should consider doing. Stick around, we'll be right back with that information. Hi there, Smart Drivers. Welcome back. Rick with Smart Drive Test talking to you today about truck driving, being a bus driver. We're not talking anything about getting a license. We are talking about getting a license for CDL drivers, but we're talking mostly for CDL drivers entering the industry, considering becoming a truck driver or a bus driver, getting a CDL license, what to expect. Corey is here, Bricks for Wheels. Corey is the moderator. Corey's really awesome at getting up videos that I suggest for you. A man is here. FZ is here. Great video on basic air brake components. Glad we could help out. Haroon, Lisa, just let us know in the comments where you're tuning in from, and if you are in fact considering a CDL license, if you already have a CDL license, if you're considering a career as a truck or bus driver, if you're wondering what to expect in 2020, because there's a lot of information out there that, oh, trucking isn't what it used to be and the pay is terrible and those types of things. And I disagree. I totally disagree. You know, some of the old timers will tell you, oh, the pay is terrible, you're disrespected, this and that and whatnot and blah, blah, blah. No, it's like any career choice. You know, it's like what I do here on YouTube. There are some things that I just disagree with. Some things, some policies and procedures that YouTube has in place that I don't agree with. But on the other hand, you know, YouTube has provided a platform where I've built a business and been able to spend time with my family, and it's been incredible. Truck driving, for many people, bus driving, can do the same thing. Yes, there are places that you're going to end up that are not going to work out for you. I've had some crap jobs driving truck, jobs that I wouldn't ever go back to. But on the other hand, I've had some great jobs driving truck, and I've made a lot of money doing it, and I got paid for what I did. So I would strongly encourage you to consider getting a job as a truck driver. The entry into truck driving is a little more difficult, especially if you live in the province of Ontario or other provinces here in Canada that have implemented the mandatory entry-level training. The United States is now thinking of doing this. It'll be interesting to sort of see down the road whether this is going to be beneficial and increase safety in the trucking industry. At this juncture, I have my doubts, because unfortunately what's happening with the entry-level training is a lot of the extra time for students to train to become a truck or bus driver is put in the yard. It's not put in the truck or the bus where they need to be, because as I say to people, learning how to drive is not a spectator sport. You need to be in the vehicle to learn how to drive it and get it around a city safely, how to back in loading docks and those types of things. So we're going to talk a little bit more about that. So Lisa, Ottawa, my dad wants to get his AZ again. Yeah, that's definitely something that you can do there in Ottawa, and there are some good companies there in Ottawa. Lisa, I work there as well. Tanzania, Kiki, hello my friend. Excellent. And Patricia, I passed all my tests, got my permit for CDL, working on my tanker test. Excited to start a new thing, just a little nervous. Yes, and Patricia, you know, same thing with me when I first started. You know, I made a number of mistakes, and you know, we didn't have the same requirements for starting a CDL license, and I didn't go to truck driving school when I started way back in the early 1990s, and trucking was very different than it is today. Cell phones and other types of communication have definitely made trucking a lot better, and it has broken down the isolation that a lot of truck drivers used to experience when they were driving. There's a lot better communication now. I'll tell you a story about truck driving. When I used to pull into say for example, I was working for a company called Burlington Motor Carriers. In the 1990s, they were a company out of Daleville, Indiana in the United States, and we were basically the Canadian drivers that pulled freight out of the States and brought it to the border, out of Canada back and forth, and then the American drivers would pick it up and take it into the States. Well, if you pulled in at 9 o'clock in the morning, dispatch would say to you, well, call me in an hour. I'll see if I can find something. Call me in an hour, call me in an hour. Well, you'd been up most of the night driving. Now you're not getting any sleep because you're getting out of the truck to call them, because this was back in the days of payphones. We didn't have cell phones, and now you have cell phones and you have other electronic communications in the vehicle. So you're not getting up every hour. You can concentrate on your sleep. So this is some of the other stuff that I'm going to talk about in terms of getting a job in North America. But first of all, I'm going to talk about, I have a presentation here for you that I'm going to talk about truck driving, how to get into truck driving, sort of what to expect and what not. So Danny's here from Yucatan. Excellent. Hello, my friend. Lisa, my dad was watching your live stream the other night and he liked your video. He wanted me to ask if you would be his teacher. I can certainly help him online, Lisa, that's for sure. We've got some courses over at the Smart Drive Test website and whatnot that will definitely help with that. And we could certainly work something out. But in terms of the truck stuff, some of the truck driving schools there in Ottawa are definitely really excellent for that. Excellent, Danny. There's certainly lots of work. You don't necessarily need to drive a truck, but there's lots of other work that you can do, driving pickup trucks and smaller trucks and whatnot. But there's definitely lots of work. So let's get over here to the presentation. So truck or bus driver. So which one of these careers do you want to do? I worked for a truck driver for a lot of years, and then when I moved to Australia, I went and drove coaches for Greyhound, and that was a very different experience. And it's got some pros and cons as well. I worked a lot of nights driving buses, but it is definitely an option that if you don't want to drive truck anymore, then you can go on and drive bus, and you can work with passengers and those types of things if that is something that might interest you. So this is a picture of me doing a pre-trip inspection. This was actually a school truck that we had for a little while, a Peterbilt with 8-inch straight pipes on it, and I thought that was kind of cool to drive around in for about the first 2 hours. And then after the first 2 hours, it got very noisy, and I was not enamored anymore after that. I just wanted my quiet truck back. So if you're new to Smart Drive Test, my name is Rick August. I do have a PhD from the University of Melbourne in Australia in legal history, study of policing, courts, and prisons, and my expertise is in policing as it relates to traffic, oddly enough. And while I was going to university in Australia, I was a Greyhound bus driver, and Australians are very fond of saying that Greyhound was founded in Australia. I never really followed that information up, but that's what they said. Became a licensed driving instructor in 1997. I worked mostly teaching air brakes and truck driving. I did work for a couple of years at Parkwood Hospital in London, Ontario, doing driver rehabilitation for people that had lost a limb, were driving with hand controls, people that had debilitating injuries and whatnot. So that's the other stuff that I did. And Corey's put my autobiography up that's available over at my website. And so now I've started the YouTube website, or the YouTube channel here, the Smart Drive Test YouTube channel, and it's been very successful, and we're helping a lot of people get their license. Now, if you are doing truck driving, you are considering bus driving, working as a commercial driver, check out this playlist here, the New York Commercial Drivers Chapter 2. Yes, it is New York State in the United States of America, but it has a lot, most 95% of the information is applicable to anybody getting a CDL license. It's essentially what it is the CDL PDIC. It's called PDIC. So Papa Delta India Charlie, got that right, which stands for Professional Development Improvement Course. It's essentially the defensive driving course for commercial drivers. And all of this information in the chapter is the information that you're going to need to pass your CDL license. So I would strongly encourage you to have a look at these videos, have a look at this defensive driving information, and if you are going for a CDL license in the United States, you're going to have to know this information to be successful. And also there's a lot of really good information in there as well to keep you safe when you're driving truck, to keep you safe when you're driving bus, because a lot of this, there's driving a vehicle, and then there's driving a commercial vehicle, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as well. Patricia's here from Bellevue. Hello, Patricia. Gaton, I'm interested in getting a CDL license in the near future, leaning towards truck driving, and yes, we definitely encourage you to do that, and you're definitely in the right place. to be talking about getting a CDL license. So the first thing you got to do as a CDL license is, most of you, 95% of you, are going to go to truck driving school. It's not likely that you're going to go out, work with somebody who's got a truck, and be successful in passing your license. This takes it to a kind of a whole new level, and there's a lot of information that driving examiners expect you to know in terms of being able to pass a CDL license test. And know that these tests are about 2.5 hours. FZ there wanted the link for the manual chapter 2, driving safely. So if you could stick that up, Corey, that playlist, that would be really great. Corey will get that up for you. So now I missed my point. Sorry about that. It'll come back to me here in a moment. So one of the things that you're going to have to do in terms of thinking about changing careers is you're going to have to think about job search. You're going to have to be able to network. You're going to have to be able to get a job. And I put up Bill Walker here. Bill is he is my protege. He is the student that I hold up for you. Bill did training with me. At the end of his training, he finished his training on Thursday. The next Tuesday, Bill was working in the oil fields industry and driving truck there. And what Bill had done is that Bill had started looking for a job even before he started truck driving school. He knew exactly what he was going to do. He wanted to go and drive truck. He was older. He was in his 60s. He was going to go and drive truck for 3 years in the oil fields, make a heap of money, and then retire. And that's exactly what he did. This was 3 or 4 years. This is 5 years. Well, it's 5 years ago now that he did this. And Bill had some health issues himself. He's a really big guy, as you can see in the photo, and you'll see in the interview with Bill, and Corey will put those videos up for you as well. But you have to start looking for a job the day, even before you get into truck driving school, because even if you call a truck driving company and they say, "Oh, call us back at the end," you can say, "Listen, do you know anybody else that might hire new drivers that I could call and contact?" You're starting to get your information out there. You're starting to talk to people, and this is what you need to do in order to be successful in a career as driving a truck. Because when the ink is still wet on your license per se, it's going to be tough for you to get a job, and you're going to have to do anything that you can to get experience. Because after you get experience as a truck driver for 3 to 6 months, once you have that amount of experience under your belt, you can get a job anywhere. And I guarantee that will happen. Just you need to trust the system. And I know if you're considering going to truck driving school, it's going to be very daunting, because you're going to have to give up 6 to 8 weeks of training to go to truck driving school. And then at the end, is there going to be a job? Am I going to get a job? Yes, you are going to get a job. There are quote unquote driver shortages in the industry, and it's not really a driver shortage problem, it's a driver retention problem. So that's what you need to do. And as well, have a look at that. There's some videos on how to find a job, how to write a resume, how to write a cover letter, and get those out there and get in front of people. And we can talk a little bit more about that in terms of finding a job in the question and answer period here. So many places where you get a CDL license, I know here in British Columbia, for example, you can get a Class 1 license, and when you get a Class 1 license, you can drive everything on the road. You can drive a coach, you can drive a school bus, you can drive an ambulance, you can drive any vehicle. So look at what you get for your tractor trailer license. And I know in many of the states it's the same. If you get your tractor trailer license, you can drive a bus, you can drive a truck and trailer, and know that. And the other thing to think about and keep in mind, say for example, you just say, well, I just want to go and drive a dump truck. Well, if you go out and look at excavating companies in terms of getting a job, a lot of dump truck companies, the dump truck will be pulling a trailer, which is called a pup. And so you got a truck and a pup. Well, as soon as you put a pup on the back of that dump truck, you are now into a tractor trailer license. You're into a Class 1 license. You're not into a Class 3 or a DZ license anymore. So know that. And as well, when you go to truck driving school, especially for those of you in the States, they have lots of endorsements. tanker endorsements, TDG, which is the transportation of dangerous goods, the endorsement for passenger vehicles and school buses as well. Make sure that you get all those endorsements, because the more endorsements you get, the more employable you are. And it doesn't take a whole lot of time to get those endorsements in addition to what you're doing at truck driving school. So anything else that you can put on your resume, you can drive a forklift, you can do heavy lifting, those types of things. All of that is going to make you more employable when you're going to get a job. So think about that when you're going to truck driving school. Now, in terms of going to work when you get out of truck driving school, there's lots and lots of opportunity for you on the other end. You're going to do some crap jobs when you first start. You're going to be working all over the place. You could potentially be working for personnel agencies where they call you on short notice. You got a couple of hours and you're going to drive 1,000 miles. That unfortunately is what's going to happen in the beginning. But after that, there are many, many benefits to working in the industry as a truck driver. So there's pride in driving a truck. A lot of people who drive truck, they love driving truck. I mean, I always loved driving truck. There was nothing more cool than, down the interstate on cruise, driving your big truck, listening to great tunes on the radio or listening to a really good audiobook. So these are some of the benefits. You're always going to be employed. There's different kinds of jobs. You can move around within the industry. If you don't like driving van trailers, you can go and do flat deck. If you don't like flat deck, you can pull tankers. If you don't like tankers, you can go and pull refrigerated trailers or temperature controlled trailers that are often to do with grocery and those kinds of things. So there's a lot of opportunity. There's different kinds of work. You can work locally, you can work regionally, or you can work long haul. So different kinds of work. Trucking is challenging. I mean, I've been teaching this information for a long time now, 30 years. And I've been a truck driver, I've been a bus driver, and there's always something to learn. There's always something new. And even, teaching people here, now we have automatic transmissions coming into the industry. We now have ABS brakes. We now have traction control. We now have automatic pistons on the wheel slide for the trailers to, adjust the weight on the truck and those types of things. So there's so much that's beginning to change. As well, you have a lot of autonomy, a lot of self-direction. Some truck drivers would argue otherwise, that you don't have a lot of autonomy in the industry, because now we have cameras in the trucks that are looking at the drivers while they're driving. But it's a trade-off, right? Companies have to protect themselves for liability and those types of things as well. And just on the note of liability, for drivers who are driving truck, you'll notice in all of the ads, when you start looking for work, it will always say must have 2 years experience. You don't have to have 2 years experience for them to hire you. You need to convince them to hire you. You need to convince them that you're motivated, that you want to work for them, and you will do the work to the best of your ability. You need to convince employers that you are willing to be trained to do the job well. The reason that they say that you have to have 2 years of experience is an insurance requirement, that it's difficult for them to hire you and get you insured and keep their insurance unless they say that in their advertisements. There's always ways around that sort of thing, but you need to convince them. And one of the best ways of getting a job that I've ever heard was, he wasn't my student, but he wanted to work for this company, and he basically went down and sat in the office for 3 days, and he said, I want to work here. I'll do anything that you want me to do in order to work for you. So he basically sat in the office, and finally they put him to work. They said, listen, can you take this truck and go and run it down the road a couple hours and deliver this and come back? Because of his determination, because he wanted to work for that company, because he just refused to leave, and he said he would do anything. He would work for free for a month. He got the job. So these are the kinds of things that you need to do. These are the kinds of things that you need to step outside of the box in order to get yourself employed. So it's not a 9-to-5 job, and there is good money in the industry. As Lisa says here in the comments, it's $25 to $30 an hour. Well, this is $25 to $30 an hour with minimal skills. I'm not saying that truck driving isn't a skilled profession. It is a skilled profession, But where else can you go to school for 6 to 8 weeks, come out at the end with a license, and then go and start working for that kind of money? There aren't very many jobs. You have to be at least semi-skilled to be able to earn that kind of money in the industry. So truck driving still pays really well, despite what all the naysayers say. They will say to you, oh, it doesn't pay that well. Well, that's not true. It does pay well, and there's good equipment at some of the companies. Some of the companies will run crap. I worked for a guy on Vancouver Island. He ran crap. It was junk. But you know, that happens at the beginning of your career, and then you kind of figure it out, right? Because you don't know everything either. So you don't know whether it's a good company or whether it's a bad company. So the first thing you need to do is you need to go to truck driving school. You need a license. If you are unfortunate enough to live in a place that has mandatory entry-level training, you're going to need at least 120 hours of training, and that's going to be broken down into classroom time, it's going to be broken down into yard time, and then it's going to be behind the wheel. Yard time, in terms of training, is mostly going to be pre-trip inspection. It's going to be a few other things, hook and unhook the truck and trailer, according to, you know, the procedure for doing that for passing your road test. So basically what it is, the 5 components of any truck driving school are going to be turning, which is the most important in my mind, pre-trip inspection, which is going to take up a lot of your time, shifting, a non-synchromesh transmission. If you go to a school with a non-synchromesh transmission, there are lots of driving schools that you can go to and drive an automatic and get a license with an automatic. The restriction on that is that if you get an automatic license, it's going to be a restriction on your license. You're only going to go to work for companies that have vehicles with automatic transmissions in it. And that could be a real limitation for you. So if you have the opportunity to learn how to drive a non-synchromesh transmission, I very much encourage you to drive a non-synchromesh transmission and learn how to drive that. It's going to be a bit tougher, but you're going to be much, much more employable than you will if you just have an automatic transmission. And then backing and coupling. So the big 3 are really turning, pre-trip inspection, and shifting. And then these other 2 are the minor components, backing and coupling. And backing, the difficulty of backing is going to depend on the test center where you're going for your license. Some places that I've worked at, Victoria on Vancouver Island, for example, they had to do a parallel park when they backed up, and that is considerably challenging for many new drivers. Here in Vernon, British Columbia, they simply have to back up 50 feet in a straight line, so that's not very difficult. I mean, you know, tractor trailers are easy to back up. Now, just on the note of backing up, I'll just say this: if you are going to truck driving school and you are going to learn how to back up a tractor trailer, if you know how to back up a tent trailer or a utility trailer with a pickup truck, all of those skills are transferable. It's all the same for backing up a truck, a pickup truck, and a smaller trailer as it is for a tractor trailer unit. The only difference is you have to use the mirrors, because most of the time you're going to be driving a road tractor with a sleeper on it, and you need more room, obviously. And it's not going to be as squirrely. If you back up a small tent trailer or whatnot, they're pretty squirrely. If you turn the steering wheel a little bit, the thing just like darts off. But with a tractor trailer unit, it can be fairly simple. So know that. Okay? We've talked about experience. You can't get experience without a job, and you can't get a job without experience. But you can get a job. And as I said, even before you start truck driving school, start looking for a job. Start calling trucking companies. Start asking them if they hire people with a new license. If they do, great. Give them your resume. Let them know that you're willing to be trained, that you're willing to do the work, you're safety conscious, you're not going to be driving like a crazy person as well. And again, in the question and answer period, we can talk a little bit about the paperwork that you're going to need in order to be successful in getting a job. Now, the other thing that you're going to need to be a truck or bus driver is you're going to need air brakes. Very few large vehicles are fitted with hydraulic brakes. Most of them now, even school buses, are all fitted with air brakes. And the reason for that is because they are reliable. They will not fail. We have so many safety systems on top of safety systems in an air brake system that they simply won't fail. So you're going to have to do that. Unfortunately, most of these air brakes are 40 years. These air brake courses are 40 years old. There's a lot of redundant information in them. They're not really about teaching you to know whether the system is safe or not. They're more about you memorizing a bunch of useless information, like, for example, modulating valves, front wheel limiting valves, treadle valves. And then, of course, every valve has 2 or 3 names, which is just going to drive you insane. One of the things that may confuse you if you don't really have a whole lot of mechanical background and don't really understand cars and brakes and those types of things is the fact that they refer to spring brakes on the vehicle and service brakes. So those terms might confuse you, and you might think to yourself, well, there's 2 braking systems on the unit. No, there's not 2 braking systems on the unit. There's 1 braking system, and there's 2 power sources that activate the brakes. One is the service brakes, which is the air pressure, and you push down on the brake pedal, and you're going up and down the road. That's the service brakes. The spring brakes are what they're referring to in terms of the spring brakes is they're referring to the parking brake and the emergency brake, and those are one and the same thing. And the way to think about this in terms of the braking system on an air brake system is it's exactly the same as what's on your car. You have a foot pedal, you go up and down the road, you push the foot pedal, and the vehicle comes to a stop, at least we hope. And also in your car, at least on the older cars, we're not talking about electronic parking brakes, which is on the newer vehicles, but on the older vehicles, you had a handle in the middle that you pulled up and applied the parking brake. And for those of you who know how to drift and you have to pull the parking brake on, it also works as an emergency brake. In the event that the service brakes, the foot pedal fails, you can also use the parking brake as an emergency brake. It's exactly the same in a truck, except in a car, it's manual. You do it with your hand. In a big truck, it's automatic because it's these large springs that apply the parking brakes or the emergency brakes. So that's what you need to know. That's kind of a quick overview of air brakes. It's a lot more complicated than that, and Corey's put up a couple of videos for you on air brakes, but that's kind of a quick overview. All right, Sammy, just a quick question. Can I convert my UK bus license into Canada? Sammy, that's going to depend on where you are in Canada, which province you're in. You'd have to go to the website of the province that you're going to go to and look and see whether your license is transferable, or get in touch with them. Timur, thanks for the topic. It may be useful for me as I would like to think about immigration from Ukraine and a truck driver job. Yes, Timur, that is definitely something that you could think about, and if you come to Canada. Awesome. Excellent. All right, so we're almost done. So more driving knowledge. One of the things that if you do get a truck or bus license that you need to do is you need to pay attention to road signs. And definitely Corey will put up the link for this video on must-know road signs for truck drivers. And one of the ones that you need to know, you must know, is height signs. It's almost like, when you're driving a car, it's almost 2-dimensional. You don't really have to pay to that 3rd dimension, up and down. But in a large vehicle, you do have to pay attention to up and down, bridges and overpasses, and the maximum height in Canada is 4.15 meters. In the United States is 13 feet 6 inches. So you must know that. The other thing you need to know is you need to know the weight of your vehicle if you're driving truck and pulling heavy. For example, if you're pulling steel, paper, liquids, all of those items, that freight can be extremely heavy. So if you have a load of juice on, for example, orange juice, for example, say, that's going to be extremely heavy. So you're going to have to be within compliance. And the easiest way to talk about weights is in the United States. It's tandem. So it's 2 axles on the back of the truck, 2 axles on the trailer. You're allowed 80,000 pounds, 32,000 on each one of the sets of duals. And then you're allowed 12,000 pounds on the front steer axle. So you got to be within compliance as well. And I need to do some videos on compliance in terms of weights and whatnot to help drivers out and whatnot. And that can all be a bit, the first time you try and do all of that and get your vehicle in weight compliance, it can be a bit daunting. So you're going to have to work with all of that when you get started driving truck. And Corey's put up the video there for you on 11 road signs that you need to pay attention to as a truck driver. And some of these can actually save your life, so have a look at that for sure. Dispatch. This is the person or persons, plural, that you're going to work with in terms of doing your job and doing your job well. And unfortunately, dispatchers get a bad rap within the industry. Whoa, there's a story about the truck driver that gets pulled over by the DOT officer, and the DOT officer says, "Oh, what are you hauling today?" And the truck driver looks down at him and he says, "Oh, I'm pulling a load of dispatcher brains," which means there's nothing in the truck, and the dispatchers aren't very smart. But that's unfortunate, because dispatchers are the people that you work with, and with a little bit of knowledge, understanding what dispatchers do, it can make your job a bit easier. And oftentimes dispatchers are the people who are responsible for finding you loads. And if you communicate well with dispatchers, that can all go a lot easier. And if you have a cordial relationship with the dispatcher, and you're not telling them that they're an ass and they don't know how to do their job, you're probably going to be making more miles, especially if you're getting paid by the mile and you're driving up and down the road. So there's some things that you need to do. There needs to be communication, and know that dispatchers match up available freight with available equipment and drivers. If you're 500 miles away from the load, it's very unlikely on a backhaul that the dispatcher is going to deadhead you 500 miles. Deadhead means running empty, and because it's expensive, it costs the company money, because these trucks, they're big trucks, big money. They cost big money, and most of these trucks, in my experience, maybe some of the smart drivers out here might correct me, but even in this day and age, most of these big trucks don't do much better than 8 miles to the gallon. They suck a lot of fuel. Behind drivers' wages, the next most expensive thing for trucking companies is the cost of fuel. And a couple of years ago, when I went back driving truck for a while, and I had it was a 2-year-old Peterbilt. I think it was a 2014 Peterbilt. That Peterbilt, you went in and filled up the fuel tanks. It was 1,000 liters of fuel, so it was $1,500 to fill that truck up, once every 2 or 3 days. So it costs a lot to run those trucks up and down the road. And as well, now we have diesel exhaust fuel, DEF fuel, which you have to put in the vehicle as well to meet environmental regulations in terms of driving the truck and whatnot. So there's a lot to do in terms of dispatch and getting your vehicle up and down the road and whatnot. So keep that in mind when you're driving. Have a good relationship with dispatch. Know what they do. Know that they're doing the best they can. You're not the only person on their roster. They have other drivers that they're trying to get loads for and keep in touch with and have a relationship with, and sometimes they have bad days, but it all works out. So there you go. So if you're considering a career as a truck or bus driver, good luck on your road test. If you're in truck driving school or you're considering going to truck driving school, leave us a comment. Always willing to help you out, get you started as a truck or bus driver. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer, especially when it comes to trucking and keeping yourself safe. So okay, so if you have any questions at all, we're more than happy to answer those and help you out, get you started as a truck or bus driver. I have a light transport vehicle license in Pakistan, Islamabad. There you go. So Aman, that's definitely something that you might be able to transfer here in Canada as well. Patricia, you're most welcome. If you have any questions at all about truck driving, driving a big truck and those types of things, we can definitely get you going, get you started, help you out, because I know it can be intimidating. There's a lot of information. Truck driving schools can give you a lot of information. They can give you a bit of misleading information. I certainly am not convinced that this mandatory entry level training program that they're now implementing is going to be beneficial. Unfortunately, I see it as a bit of a windfall for truck driving schools, that now it's mandated that students coming in have to take, a prescribed amount of training in order to earn their license, and I don't think it's making them any safer, because my criticism of it is that they simply put the students into a classroom, they simply put the students into the yard, and that is not how you learn how to drive a truck. Learning how to drive a truck is experiential. You need to be out, and you need to be driving the vehicle. You need to be delivering loads, and you need to be working with somebody who can give you guidance in terms of doing that and doing that safely. All right, FZ, I'm trying to get my CDL permit on my own, or do you suggest I should go to a CDL school? I just started 2 weeks ago studying Arizona CDL. So FZ, do you have access to a truck? Just let me know that in the comments there. Tommy, have you ever had a student that you were teaching driving a truck and you got pulled over? Yeah, Tommy, I've had students in the vehicle and I've been pulled into the scales a couple of times. I'm not sure whether it's the scale here in Vernon, British Columbia, or other places, because I've never had difficulty with scales anywhere. But the one here in Vernon was having a go at me that I was speeding through the scales. So one time I went through and they told me I was speeding. I said, okay, yeah, that's fine. And so they kind of let me go. And then the next time I come through, they pulled me in again and told me the same thing, that I was speeding. And I said, no, I wasn't speeding. I said, I was the one driving the truck. And I said, I made sure because you told me this once before. So anyway, they kind of gave me a hard time, which, most of the time I have been pulled over a fair number of times in the truck by police, and I've been pulled into the DOT. Not a lot, but I have been pulled over a couple of times. I'll tell you a story about that, getting pulled over in Kentucky. All right, FZ, so you have access to your own truck. You do have access to your own truck, FZ. Now, here's the point that I'm going to make for you in terms of going for your CDL license and doing a road test. So you've got to do a pre-trip inspection. It has to be thorough. And I do have a couple of videos in here. I don't have a complete and thorough pre-trip inspection for CDL vehicles, but there is a course over at the Smart Drive Test website that will give you a complete printout of everything that you've got to check for your CDL. Now, hooking and unhooking, again, it's very specific about what you need to do. What I might suggest to you, FZ, is try and do most of it on your own if you can, and then maybe spend a few $100 and go to a truck driving school and get them to do 2 or 3 lessons with you, because then they can give you the specific information that you need in order to be successful in passing the road test. Because you don't want to go spend all that time and energy going and doing the work and then showing up and doing your test and not being successful. You want to try and do everything you can to be successful the first time, because it can be very it can knock you back a fair bit if you're not successful in passing your road test the first time, and it can take you a bit to get kind of back up on your feet again. So I suggest that you do as much as you can. And remember, driving schools teach students how to pass a road test every day. So do the best you can to do that. All right. Timur, please could you show that screen about self-paced course that you had back a moment ago? Okay. So that was, Timur, that was for air brakes. I have an air brake course over at the Smart Drive Test website. It's a self-paced course. You can do that over there. You can have a look at it. And Corey will put the video up for you on that as well. And if you have any questions, I'll be more than happy to help you with that. If people want me to go over what the course is about and what it does, I can certainly do that as well. Patricia, I did my test on my own, but my company is teaching me to drive. I start driving next week. Okay, so Patricia, which company are you with? And I'll just have a look here. Yes. Okay, so you asked me how much you should start out as. You should definitely, oh, you're in Idaho there. Excellent. So which company are you with in Idaho there, Patricia? You should definitely get a salary of $30,000 or $40,000 when you first start driving, especially if you're working with a company and they're training you. I mean, you're not going to make big money, but definitely after your training and after the first 6 months, I know that some of the companies pay really well. I know that Schneider National in the States there, they're one of the larger trucking companies in the States, big orange pumpkin trucks, they used to be called. They have an excellent mentor program. And this is just on this note of mentor programs, this is one of the things that I would encourage you to do, especially if you don't have a lot of mechanical background. And this is one of the things that has changed for the trucking industry, is that when I came into the trucking industry, I grew up on a farm. I'd driven combines and tractors and trucks and trailers and all that kind of equipment. So when I came to trucking, it wasn't really a big leap for me forward because I'd already had all of these skills of driving large equipment. What's changed in the last 30 or 40 years is that very few people work on a farm anymore. Most people grow up in cities. They don't grow up driving equipment, lawn tractors, combines and swathers and those kinds of things. So when they come to driving a truck, it's brand new for them. I mean, maybe they have some experience driving a trailer with a pickup truck and those types of things, but it's brand new. They don't really have a whole lot of mechanical experience. They didn't grow up in a shop out back with their dad. So when they come to truck driving, everything is new. Backing up the truck is new. Learning how to shift the truck is new. Getting used to the size of the truck is new. Manipulating the truck through a city is new. So give yourself some time. Give yourself some, a little bit of, take it easy on yourself is what I'm trying to say, right? And just on that point, know that for the first couple of hours, or not the first hours, for the first 3 days of truck driving school is going to be the hardest. But if you make it through the first 3 days of truck driving school, after that, it's wash, rinse, repeat. It's the same thing. You've already seen all the pre-trip inspection. You already know the shift pattern on the truck. You can move it around and those types of things. But know that it's just going to be repetition of what you've already learned. So you're going to learn that information. And as Patricia says, she's laughing here. She says, yeah, it's all new. It's totally all new, right? You don't know anything about air brakes. You don't know anything about brakes. You don't know about a fifth wheel coupling system. You don't know about airlines. You don't know about big trucks and shifters. And you sit in this goofy truck, and it looks like you're sitting in the cockpit of an airplane. It's and Peterbilts are the worst. I mean, they have so many gauges and switches for everything on the truck. Some of the information whether you need to know or don't need to know. I mean, I have no idea why you would need to know the temperature of the rear axles on the truck going up and down the road. But it's all there, right? And it makes it difficult for new students because you're sitting in the truck and you're trying to figure out, okay, which gauges are important and which gauges are not important. And you need to, as an instructor, explain to students which gauges are important and which ones they can ignore. And for the most part, for new truck drivers getting in a truck, and you're looking at the dashboard going, oh my God, what the heck? And it's even worse in this day and age because now we have telematics and we have all of this computer information that will give you information that will just like boggle your mind. But you kind of got to put all of that aside and focus on driving the truck and getting the truck safely up and down the road. And that can be daunting and intimidating for the first 3 or 4 days when you get used to the truck. FC, same here, worked on farms in my teenage years. Yes, so FC, that might make it a little bit easier for you, and those are definitely transferable skills. Pradeep, no, I don't have a training school in Ontario. Everything that I do is online, my friend. But definitely tell me where you are in, send me an email, rick@smartdrivetest.com, and tell me where you are in Canada, and I'll point you in the right direction. I'll recommend a driving school for you, okay, my friend? I'll definitely help you with that. Jonathan, you have your test today. Good luck on that. Truck Smuggler, good day, my friend. How are you? Excellent. And Patricia is going to work for IMC Idaho Material Construction, and they're going to help her out. And as I was saying, if you can go to work for a company that has a mentor program, that you can get into a mentor program and you can work for a few weeks with another driver that will show you how to fill out paperwork, that will show you how to fill out bills of lading, they'll show you what freight is on the vehicle, they'll show you how to get into shippers and receivers and those types of things. All of that is just going to make your life so much more interesting because, as we used to say in the truck driving school, when you got your license and you left the truck driving school, that's when the real learning began. Because now you're on your own, and now you've got to figure it out on your own. And I mean, it's certainly a lot easier now with cell phones and other types of communications in the vehicle and whatnot, and navigation systems. Oh my God, navigation systems just make truck driving so much easier. So much easier. I've gotten completely lost in the 1990s when I was driving truck. When you didn't have cell phones, you didn't have GPS, you basically had a map and a payphone if you could get to a payphone. And that was the thing that really sucked in the 1990s about getting lost, was if you got lost in the 1990s driving a truck, when I was driving truck, you got lost driving the truck, you had to find someplace not only that had a payphone, but someplace that you could park the truck so you could stop the truck, get out of the truck, and go and call dispatch or call the shipper or receiver to get instructions. And this is just on that note of navigation. Don't don't rely solely on that. Make sure you're looking out the window, you're looking at the signs and those types of things, because you may end up going down a road that's no truck route, or there's a low bridge or overpass, or those types of things. So make sure you're looking out the window as well. And especially if you're not using a commercial navigation system, a commercial GPS. Yeah, global positioning. Yeah, right. Okay. Get all the short forms here. All right. Yale, when is MELT going to be implemented in BC? Well, my hope is never, but unfortunately I think it's coming, because what happens is that the bureaucrats look at other provinces that have already implemented the MELT, the mandatory entry-level training, and it's coming. They're simply looking at it now. They're trying to put in the best program, and they're going around. I actually attended a meeting there a few months ago. So it's on its way. Unfortunately, it's going to be 110 hours, 120 hours. And again, as I said, this is kind of a windfall for the truck driving schools, because, now you have to take a certain amount of training, and it's going to cost $8,000 or $10,000 for you to get your CDL license. And where is that funding coming from? That's the question that I ask, is that where is this funding coming from? How are these people getting into the truck driving industry? Because it's expensive. It is for sure. Franco, hello my friend. Pradeep, Rick at smartdrivetest.com. Rick at smartdrivetest.com. All right, so that's basically it. And the other thing is that when you start driving, you're going to make mistakes. I had another gentleman that I trained. He went to work for truck driving. He was a new truck driver. Took out a fire hydrant. He was backing up, got into the fire hydrant, took the fire hydrant out. I have stories as well. When I first started driving truck, I made mistakes. I made a ton of mistakes. I pulled out on a turn out of a truck stop in northern Ontario. Not enough gap, not at all enough gap. So know that these big trucks are not cars, and this is one of the transitions that you're going to go through, is that you got to know that acceleration of a large truck or bus is much, much less than what it is in a car. It's not a car at all. So you have to allow a lot more space around your vehicle to be able to pull out, make left-hand turns, make right-hand turns, and those types of things. You're going to learn about off-tracking in terms of getting these things around corners. And of the 5 components that you're going to deal with in truck driving school, turning, pre-trip inspection, shifting, backing, and coupling, turning is the most important. And you have to figure out where your vehicle is in space and place, and backing can get you up into trouble as well. One of the places I was down in Arkansas, backing into a loading dock, got the truck jackknifed like this, and I dented one of the fuel tanks on it. Well, that was kind of my badge of honor, driving around the truck for the rest of my career with that company with a dent in the fuel tank, because that's what I did. So backing up, that can happen, that you can put dents in the fuel tank. So when you're backing up, keep in mind, goal, get out and look. If you are unsure about where your vehicle is in space and place at any given time, stop the vehicle, secure the vehicle, put on the parking brakes, get out of the vehicle, and have a look about where you are in space and place. And as well, I know that a lot of drivers with, especially city trucks, day cabs they're called. Day cabs are essentially big pickup trucks that pull semi-trailers, and they have a back window in them, will tell you that you can back up on the blind side. The blind side is the passenger side of the truck. As well, a lot of instructors, I know instructors for a fact that teach students how to blindside back up. Do not blindside back up. Okay? Don't. You will get into trouble when you blindside back up. If you could just go out and go around the block or come around on the other side and get on the sight side, on the driver's side, you are going to be much, much safer. But if you get in on that blind side, I guarantee you, you're going to hit something, you're going to hit a fixed object, you're going to damage the truck or something. Do not back up on the blind side. It is my thing. It's my pet peeve. Don't do it. I don't teach it. But unfortunately, a lot of driving instructors teach students how to do it, and eventually students go out in the industry. They think they can do it, and then they do it, and they get into trouble. So, goal, G-O-A-L, get out and look. If you're in the least bit of doubt about where the vehicle is, get out and look. Now, saying that about backing up on the blind side, there are some places that you're absolutely going to have to back up on the blind side. You won't get away from that. If you do, get out lots and lots and lots. I had a place in Edmonton, Alberta, here in Canada, that I had to blindside back in against a fence into a loading dock, and I was driving a road tractor. It's got a bunk on the back of it, and driving a road tractor, I had to get out at least 10 times to back in and make sure I got in. Because once you kind of get it into the hole, then you can kind of jockey forward and then you can see again. But getting it around on that blind side, it is really hard. So know that for the purposes of going out into the industry. And this is one of the things that mentors can help you with. And the other thing is, if you are tired and trying to back the truck up. I was delivering to a bank because I pulled office furniture for a lot of years. And I was delivering to a bank. I got in there really late. It was about 1 o'clock in the morning, and I was trying to back into the parking lot to, get the truck shut down and to sleep. And I couldn't get it in. And this police officer showed up and didn't put the lights on, but did come up and ask me if I needed some help and tried to kind of help me. And finally, I just kind of got it stuck in there. It wasn't pretty. It was actually pretty ugly. But the next morning, I got up, pulled out, backed it straight into where it needed to be. So know that when you're tired, you're going to make mistakes too. So you're going to have to manage your fatigue as well. And Corey will put the video up for you on fatigue management and getting sleep, looking after yourself, managing your health, and those types of things, because these are other things that you need to do to keep yourself safe as a truck or bus driver. Tamir, okay, sounds like with MELT program, my immigration program just literally melt all the way down. Sorry to hear that, Tamir. No, there's definitely ways that you can do it. You can definitely, just have a look at it. It's not impossible. It's going to be challenging, but you can definitely do it, Tamir. Patricia, one guy forgot to put his bed down and took out a power line. Yes, and that happens with dump trucks. The other thing, Patricia, if you're working with a company that has tip trucks, dump trucks, we had a guy, because where I worked at the truck driving school in Kelowna there, they also had an excavation company. And you got to make sure that the truck, when you're lifting up the dump box, that the truck is on level ground. And not only is it on level ground, but is it on secure ground, because the one guy lifted the truck up, wasn't on secure ground, wasn't level, and the truck tipped over. So know that is another danger in terms of driving truck. What happened with that was it punctured the fuel tank, and he dumped 200 gallons of fuel onto the site. Well, they had to dig all that fuel out, all that contaminated soil out as part of the cleanup. And I don't know what they did with the soil, but there's obviously some program, some procedures, policies, and procedures that they have in place to be able to dispose of that and decontaminate that soil that's polluted with diesel fuel. So there's all kinds of stories about truck drivers making mistakes, and that's one of the mistakes. The other mistakes that happen, I've seen these happen. You can probably see these on YouTube. There's probably some videos of car haulers, because the car haulers, when they put the cars on the top deck, they put the cars on the bottom deck, the top deck actually lifts up. It's on a set of hydraulics. So they lift the top deck up, they drive the cars on, and then the deck comes back down to try and to reduce the height of the trailer. Well, guys will put the cars up on the top deck and forget to lower the deck, and they're going down the road and they'll clean a brand new car off on an overpass or those types of things. That happens every now and again. So there are a lot of things that can go wrong in the trucking industry. And the other thing that I say to students about the trucking industry is CYA, stuff happens, and CYA. cover your ass. You know, do what protects you, because if something goes wrong, you're the one that's going to be held responsible. For example, one of the best explanations of that, if you're backing up and you have a spotter, and say, for example, you lose sight of the spotter and you hit something, you're responsible. Not the spotter. You are responsible. So know that when you're backing up, even if you have a spotter, you are responsible for that unit. And if you go on and you drive trucks, or drive buses rather, remember your number one priority in terms of bus driving is the safety and comfort of your passengers. You must have that at the forefront of your mind all the time. And then of course you're going to deal with customer service and those types of things. Epic. Hello, my friend. Speaking of unrestricted commercial driver's license, what is the best way to practice a manual truck rather than taking it in an automatic, since there is restrictions? Yeah, one of the things you need to do is you need to drive the truck. You need to get somebody that can help you teach you how to drive a non-synchronous transmission. And the best way to do that, Epic, is with a driving instructor who has experience teaching people how to drive non-synchronous transmissions. Unfortunately, the thing with non-synchronous transmissions with truck driving is that show me 50 driving instructors, I'll show you 50 ways to drive a truck. And unfortunately, if you, Corey, I'll put up the video for you on shifting theory. There's kind of these hybrid methods of learning how to shift a non-synchronous transmission. I always encourage students, it's not mandatory that you use the clutch in terms of learning how to shift a non-synchronous transmission, but I always encourage people to teach students how to use the clutch because it's much faster, because the transmission is more forgiving when you're using the clutch. Therefore, the student can pick up how to shift a non-synchronous transmission faster, and then they can focus on the other things that they need to focus on in terms of getting their license. So that's what I recommend for new students, is to learn how to use the clutch. You're going to pick up how to shift the truck faster, and then you can focus on your pre-trip inspection, your turning, and your coupling, and your backing up. Okay, you don't need to focus all your attention on that shifter, because for the first 2 or 3 days, that's where your attention's going to be, is on that shifter in terms of learning how to drive a truck. Again, there are a lot of companies that have automatic trucks now. In the States, with the larger companies, you're mostly going to be driving 9 and 10 speeds. If you do start doing a lot of mountain driving, here in British Columbia, for example, we love our Super Bs, which is the 2 trailers joined with a 5th wheel in the center. And when most of these trucks that are hauling Super Bs, which run out at 140,000 pounds, most of these trucks are going to be running 18 speeds in them. Just simply because the automatic transmission technology is not quite there yet in terms of being able to sustain pulling that amount of weight up and down over these big grades. You know, we've got some huge hills here. I mean, the Coquihalla, for example, is 12% for 15 miles, so it's a big hill. And other places, Idaho, for example, where Patricia is, Washington State, Northern California, places like that, they all have these mountains as well. So these are things that you're going to be dealing with if you take on becoming an over-the-road truck driver. All right, so that's pretty much the end of it. What we'll do is stick around or come back and look in the description. I didn't get a chance to put it up, but there is a checklist for the DOT. If you get pulled into the weigh scale, there's a certain amount of paperwork that you need to take into the examiner, because when you go over the scale, okay, even if you're in compliance, so for example, there's nothing wrong with your truck that they can see as you're driving past the scale. They're going to check the weights on your vehicle as long as you're in compliance, or they just want to check your paperwork and those types of things. There's a lot of paperwork that you need to take into the scale. So they'll want to see your license. They want to see the registration and insurance for the truck. They want to see the bills of lading. They want to know what freight is on the truck. They want to see logbooks, and they want to see any supporting documentation for logbooks. So I have a checklist for that over at the Smart Drive Test website. And what I'll do is I'll put that link for the DOT checklist, paperwork checklist that you need to take into the DOT down in the description. So have a look for that down there. If you have any questions at all, if you're watching on the replay, leave us a comment down in the comment section. We'll definitely help you out in terms of considering a career as a truck or bus driver, getting a CDL license. Anything that we can do to help you out, we'll do that. For our friends overseas who are thinking about immigrating to Canada, getting a CDL license, first and foremost, you're going to have to check out the Canadian immigration website to see whether you qualify for a work permit. That's your first stop, is Canadian immigration. So we'll put the link down there for that as well, and that way you can have a look at that over there. All right, so if you had a road test in the last couple of weeks, congratulations on passing that if you were successful. And if you have a road test coming up in the next week or so, good luck on that. And remember, pick the best answer, not necessarily the right answer. Have a great day. Bye now.